Alexander Drake was a man who seemed to have everything. Towering skyscrapers carried his name, boardrooms fell silent when he spoke, and billions of dollars shifted at his command. The world admired him, envied him, and some even feared him. But behind the polished suits and the perfectly controlled smile, Alexander harbored a secret. He had stopped believing in love. Years ago, a devastating betrayal had taught him that love was a dangerous distraction, a weakness he could not afford. So, he built walls around his heart, so high and so thick that no one could ever climb them. His world revolved around strategy, profit, and control. Emotions had no place in his meticulously structured life. It was a Monday morning, just like any other. The city buzzed with its usual chaotic energy far below his penthouse office window. Inside the glass-walled sanctuary of Drake Enterprises, Alexander sat behind his massive mahogany desk. Immersed in contracts, completely detached from the world outside. That's when she walked in. Lily Bennett. She was his new intern, and she seemed almost fragile, with bright, observant eyes that took in everything. An intern's job was usually simple: coffee runs, filing, and staying out of the way. But something about her energy, a mix of nervous confidence and a shy smile, made Alexander look up from his papers. Then, disaster struck. As she navigated the office with a tray of coffee, her elbow grazed the edge of his chair. A cup wobbled, hesitated for a moment, and then tipped over. Dark, hot liquid splashed across his pristine white shirt. "Oh, no. I am so sorry," Lily gasped, fumbling for napkins, her face a mask of horror. Alexander froze. The usual hum of the office seemed to fade away. It was just a shirt, an expensive one, but just a shirt nonetheless. Yet, something inside him, a part he thought had long been dormant, stirred. He found himself feeling a strange mix of irritation and curiosity. "Careful," he said, his voice calm but laced with an edge of steel. "You're standing in the CEO's office." Lily's cheeks flushed a deep crimson. I didn't mean to. Please, let me help you clean it." He watched her, her hands trembling slightly as she dabbed at the stain. Most people would have either frozen in fear or started making excuses. But not her. Her apology was sincere, her efforts genuine. There was an honesty about her that was disarming. She was different from the ambitious interns who usually paraded through his office with rehearsed smiles and calculated compliments. "Stop worrying," he said, surprising even himself with the softness in his tone. "It's just a shirt. Accidents happen." Lily looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. "You're not angry?" A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Alexander's lips. "I've dealt with far worse." The rest of the day passed in a blur of introductions and paperwork. But Alexander found his gaze repeatedly drifting towards Lily. He noticed the small things, the way she listened with intense focus, how her brow would furrow in concentration, the quiet laugh she'd let out at her own small jokes. She wasn't trying to impress him, she was just being herself. By the end of the day, an unfamiliar feeling had taken root in him: curiosity. He had spent decades building a fortress around his heart, convinced that emotions were a liability. And now, this young, clumsy intern had captured his attention without even trying. That evening, alone in his penthouse, Alexander stared out at the sprawling city lights. He couldn't shake the feeling that the spilled coffee was more than just an accident. Why had this one person managed to unsettle him so deeply, to make him feel alive in a way he hadn't in years? He didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. Lily Bennett was about to walk into his life and challenge everything he believed. She would frustrate him, intrigue him, and awaken feelings he thought were gone forever. For now, Alexander Drake was still the cold, calculating CEO, the man who had everything but love. But as he leaned back in his chair, a new thought crept into his mind. Maybe, just maybe, meeting Lily Bennett was no accident at all. The story is just getting started. The next few days at Drake Enterprises passed in a blur for Alexander Drake. He was the man who rarely noticed anyone. But now, he found himself thinking about Lily Bennett far more than he wanted to admit. She wasn't just clumsy or ordinary anymore. There was something about her energy, her brightness, and the way she fearlessly faced challenges that made him uneasy. Not a bad kind of uneasy, but a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. A feeling that both intrigued and unsettled him. Alexander knew he had to keep his distance. She was an intern, and he was the CEO. The rules, the appearances, the reputation, he had so carefully built all of it, screamed that he shouldn't even notice her. And yet, he did. Every time she walked into his office, he found himself paying attention. He noticed the way she tilted her head when she was deep in thought, the way her eyes sparkled when she finally solved a difficult problem, and that quiet, satisfied smile she wore after a task well done. It was distracting, captivating, and utterly unprofessional. One evening, As the city outside darkened, a sudden and violent storm swept across the skyline. The office lights flickered ominously, then went out completely, plunging the top floor into darkness. Alexander and Lily were the only two left, both working late. The elevators were already shut down for safety. The security guard, on his final rounds, informed them they would have to wait until the power was restored. They were stuck. "Looks like we're trapped," Lily said, her voice laced with a hint of nervousness as she glanced around the vast, dark office. "Seems like it," Alexander replied, leaning back in his chair, his voice calm. He half expected her to panic, to show some sign of distress, but she didn't. Instead, she pulled a small flashlight from her bag, its beam cutting a bright circle in the darkness. "You always work this late?" she asked, her voice breaking the heavy silence, clearly trying to make conversation. "I usually finish earlier," Alexander said, surprising himself with his own honesty, "but some things just can't wait." There was a pause. Then, Lily laughed softly, a sound that seemed to echo in the quiet space. "I guess even CEOs have problems they can't control." Alexander found himself chuckling, a low, rumbling sound that hadn't left his throat in what felt like years. It felt foreign, yet strangely natural. "I suppose so," he admitted. For the next few minutes, which stretched into an hour, they talked, not just about work, but about life, and surprisingly, about themselves. Lily shared stories of her struggles to get this internship, how she juggled part-time jobs just to pay for her studies, and the dreams she carried silently in her heart, dreams she rarely spoke of. Hearing her talk, Alexander found himself opening up too, something he never did. He spoke of his meteoric rise in the business world, the lonely nights that came with it, and the bitter mistakes he had made when he trusted the wrong people. He didn't mean to tell her so much, but somehow, the darkness outside and the intimate quiet of the office made it easy to talk, to be vulnerable. You really think about people differently, don't you?" Lily said softly, her voice barely a whisper. It was as if she had looked past his hardened exterior and guessed the truth behind his guarded eyes. Alexander looked at her, startled. How could she see through him so easily? I suppose I do," he admitted reluctantly, the words feeling heavy on his tongue. For the first time in years, Alexander felt a connection. A real connection. It wasn't based on business deals or strategic alliances, but something warmer, something genuine that stirred deep in his chest. The storm raged on, and the office grew colder, but neither of them seemed to notice. They were lost in a world of conversation, shared laughter, and personal stories. Alexander's walls, the ones he had built so carefully over the years to protect himself, began to show cracks. He was letting someone in. Then, just as suddenly as they went out, the lights flickered back on. The familiar hum of the office returned, shattering the spell. Reality came rushing back. As the normal world reasserted itself, Alexander immediately reminded himself of the rules. She was an intern. He was the CEO. Office rumors, professional boundaries, the risk to his company and her career. All of it warned him to stop this, to stop feeling, to stop thinking about her in this way. But he couldn't. It was too late. Over the next few days, he found himself actively seeking her advice, watching her solve complex problems that stumped his senior staff, and feeling emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a decade. It wasn't just admiration for her talent anymore, it was curiosity, a deep fascination, and maybe, just maybe, the beginnings of something more. Lily, on her side, noticed the subtle changes too. The way Alexander would hold her gaze a second too long, the way a small smile would play on his lips when she succeeded, the occasional pause in his voice when he was truly considering what she said. She had no idea how deeply she was affecting the most powerful man in the city. Could a brief storm in a darkened office truly be the spark that changes two lives forever? Could a cold, guarded CEO finally start to believe in love and, not just any love, but love from someone completely and utterly unexpected? The foundation had been laid, but the path forward was filled with risk, rules, and the watchful eyes of an entire company. The real storm, it seemed, was just beginning. Weeks had passed, and Alexander Drake found himself thinking about Lily Bennett more than he cared to admit. She wasn't just another intern who blended into the background of his bustling company. No, Lily was different. She was sharp, poised, and radiated a kind of vibrant energy that seemed to light up every room she entered. Each time she walked into his office, a file in her hand and a determined look on her face, he felt an unexplainable pull, a strange magnetic force he hadn't experienced in years. He'd built his empire, Drake Enterprises, by being cold, calculating, and detached. Feelings were a liability, a weakness he couldn't afford. Yet, with Lily, his carefully constructed walls were starting to show cracks. One Friday afternoon, the controlled chaos of his corporate world shattered. A major competitor, a shark circling his waters for years, launched a hostile takeover bid. The news rippled through the boardroom like a shockwave, sending his seasoned executives into a state of barely concealed panic. Voices were raised, fingers were pointed, but Alexander remained a pillar of calm amidst the storm. He had faced crises before. This was just another battle. He called Lily into his office, the emergency meeting still buzzing just outside his door. He trusted her instincts. He slid the thick stack of reports across his polished mahogany desk. The documents were filled with dire projections and aggressive legal jargon. He looked at her, his expression serious. "I need your advice," he said, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. He never asked for advice. He gave orders. Lily didn't flinch. She picked up the reports, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. The silence in the office was thick, broken only by the soft rustle of paper. After what felt like an eternity, she finally looked up, her eyes clear and resolute. "We can fight this," she began, her voice steady. "We can restructure our short-term investments and leverage our assets to present a counteroffer. It's a high-risk move," she admitted, "but if it works, it won't just fend them off. It will strengthen our market position and save the company." Alexander stared at her, genuinely impressed. The seasoned professionals in his boardroom, men and women twice her age with decades of experience, had panicked. They saw only the threat, the looming defeat. But Lily, this brilliant young intern, saw an opportunity. Her clarity and unwavering confidence were astounding. A slow, rare smile touched his lips. "All right," he said, a newfound respect in his voice. "Let's do it your way." Working through the night, they executed her strategy. It was a high-stakes corporate chess match, and Lily was his queen, making bold, decisive moves that left him in awe. By the next morning, as the sun cast its first golden rays over the city, the battle was won. The hostile bid was withdrawn, their counteroffer had worked perfectly, and Drake Enterprises was secure. The relief in the office was palpable. Later that day, Alexander called Lily back into his office. The usual sterile atmosphere felt different, warmer somehow. "You did well today?" he said softly, his voice stripped of its usual commanding tone. Lily's cheeks flushed a delicate pink. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her eyes cast downward. "Call me Alexander," he corrected her gently. A significant pause hung in the air between them. The professional boundary, the invisible wall separating the CEO and the intern, seemed to dissolve. In that moment, a clumsy move sent a stack of papers cascading off the edge of his desk. Instinctively, they both reached down to grab them. Their hands brushed. A jolt, like a static shock but 1,000 times more potent, shot up Alexander's arm. He hadn't felt a spark like that in years, maybe ever. He saw Lily's face turn a bright shade of crimson as she quickly snatched her hand back, avoiding his gaze. The air was now charged with a new, unspoken tension. Over the following days, the dynamic between them shifted completely. Alexander found himself creating excuses to have her near. He'd call her into meetings that didn't require her presence, just to hear her insightful contributions. He'd ask for her opinion on projects, valuing her fresh perspective. He started noticing the little things, the way her eyes would light up when she solved a complex problem, the sound of her quiet laughter echoing from the other room, her fierce determination to prove herself. On her side, Lily began to notice subtle changes in him. The perpetually stern CEO now offered rare, fleeting smiles directed only at her. His typically piercing gaze would soften when it landed on her, lingering just a second too long. He'd perform small, almost imperceptible gestures of kindness, like making sure there was a fresh coffee on her desk before a long meeting. One evening, they were the last two left in the office, poring over a new marketing proposal. The city lights twinkled outside his panoramic window, creating a backdrop of 1,000 tiny stars. "You should go home," Alexander said, his voice a low rumble in the quiet space. "It's late." Lily shook her head, not looking up from the spreadsheet on her screen. "I want to finish this," she replied, her voice filled with a familiar mix of stubbornness and dedication. He didn't argue. Instead, he stayed, leaning against a bookshelf and watching her, silently appreciating her work ethic, her passion. Finally, unable to bear the charged silence any longer, he spoke. "Let me take you to dinner," he said, the words coming out before he could second-guess them. "Just a thank you for everything." Lily hesitated for a heartbeat, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then, she looked up at him, a soft smile gracing her lips, and nodded. That night, over dinner, at a quiet, elegant restaurant, the last vestiges of their professional roles melted away. They weren't CEO and intern. They were just Alexander and Lily. He found himself opening up in a way he never had before, sharing stories of a lonely childhood spent in boarding schools and the immense pressure of inheriting a corporate dynasty. He spoke of the isolation that came with power, the feeling of being a king in an empty castle. In return, Lily shared her own vulnerabilities, her dreams of making a real impact, and the struggles she had overcome just to get a foot in the door of a world that seemed determined to keep her out. They talked for hours, discovering a deep connection that went far beyond the office walls. In the week that followed, their bond grew stronger with each passing day. It was a silent conversation, spoken through small, meaningful actions. Alexander would leave her short, handwritten notes of encouragement on her desk. Lily would leave her bold, innovative ideas on his sparka that had been ignited by a simple touch had now become an undeniable fire, a warm, glowing presence in both of their lives. They were drawn to each other, two souls from different worlds finding a common ground. One quiet evening, as they once again worked late, the unspoken feelings finally spilled over. The air was thick with anticipation. Alexander turned to her, his heart pounding in his chest, a feeling he thought he'd long since forgotten. "I've spent my entire life believing love is a weakness," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper, a liability. "But with you, Lily, I can't stop thinking about you." Lily's eyes welled with tears, but they were tears of joy. She moved closer to him, her voice just as soft. "I feel the same," she confessed. The coldest CEO in the city, the man who had built an empire of ice around his heart, had finally begun to let it thaw. And as they stood there, bathed in the soft glow of the city lights, they both knew that the first spark had grown into something powerful, something real. Their unexpected journey of love had only just begun. The spark between Alexander and Lily didn't just fade. It grew into a quiet fire that warmed their corner of the office. Alexandro, usually so composed in all business, found his professional mask slipping. He couldn't help but be drawn to her. He'd catch himself watching the way her eyes would light up when a new idea struck her, or the gentle way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was lost in thought. He even started telling his rare, dry jokes just to see her smile. It was a smile that could brighten the entire floor. But they weren't the only ones who noticed. In an office, secrets have a short lifespan. Soon, the whispers started. They began as quiet murmurs by the coffee machine and grew into full-blown gossip in the hallways. The CEO and the intern, they'd say, their words laced with a mix of envy and suspicion. Some colleagues gave Lily cold looks, their jealousy plain to see. Others just watched, waiting for the drama to unfold. Lily felt a shift in the atmosphere. The friendly office she once knew now felt tense, like a room holding its breath. She was a careful person, always trying to do the right thing. And the thought that her feelings for Alexander could jeopardize her career, her future, was terrifying. Just when things couldn't seem more complicated, a rival company decided to pour gasoline on the fire. They launched a vicious smear campaign, twisting the narrative and painting Alexander and Lily's connection as something scandalous. False stories exploded across social media. The office whispers turned into loud, judgmental conversations. The pressure mounted, reaching all the way to the top. Even members of the board started to question Alexander's leadership and judgment. He was a man used to being in control, but this was a different kind of crisis, one that was deeply personal. Alexander wasn't one to back down from a fight. He called Lily into his office, the heavy oak door closing behind her, shutting out the rest of the world for a moment. He looked at her, his expression firm but his eyes full of concern. "We'll face this together," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "I won't let anyone harm yours." Lily's composure finally broke. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring his determined face. "I just don't want to cause problems for you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You haven't caused anything?" Alexander replied gently, his tone softening. He took a step closer. "You've only made me see that there's more to life than work." In the middle of this corporate storm, they found their own quiet harbor. They continued working late into the night, not just as CEO and intern, but as partners. Together, they strategized, poring over reports and plans to counter the rival's attack and protect the company. And amidst the chaos, they found small, stolen moments of joy. They'd share a pizza over a pile of paperwork, their laughter echoing in the empty office. They discovered a shared sense of humor and a deep respect for each other's minds. These late-night sessions became their sanctuary, a place where the outside world and its judgments couldn't touch them. One evening, as they sat across from each other at his large desk, surrounded by the glow of computer screens, Alexander reached out and took her hand. The simple touch sent a jolt of electricity through them both. "I know the world may judge us," he said softly, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, "but I can't hide my feelings anymore. I don't want to." Lily looked up at him, a genuine, heartfelt smile spreading across her face. She squeezed his hand, her answer clear without needing any words. "Neither can I," she finally whispered. In that moment, they made a silent pact. Their connection, forged in the crucible of office gossip and corporate sabotage, had only grown stronger. It was unshakable. But they both knew this was just the beginning. The world was still watching, and the path ahead was filled with challenges. How do you balance a relationship between a CEO and an intern? How do you navigate the complex dynamics of power, love, and professional boundaries when every move you make is under a microscope? Their love was real. Their bond was strong. But could it truly survive the relentless scrutiny of the world around them? Or would the immense pressure from outside their little bubble eventually become too much, forcing them to choose between their hearts and their careers? The biggest challenges were yet to come. The week after the office crisis, Alexander Drake did something unexpected. He invited me, Lily Bennett, his intern, to the most prestigious business gala of the year, my very first one. As we pulled up to the venue, I anxiously adjusted my dress in the car mirror, my reflection, a stranger in borrowed elegance. My hands were shaking, a nervous tremor I couldn't seem to control. Alexander must have noticed. He reached over and gently took my hand, his touch surprisingly warm and steady. "You'll be fine," he said softly, his voice a low hum that cut through my anxiety. "Just be yourself." His words were simple, but they were exactly what I needed to hear. He wasn't asking me to be someone else, just to be me. We stepped into the grand ballroom, and I had to physically stop myself from gaping. The room was a universe of glittering lights, reflecting off massive crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen fireworks from the ceiling. It was a sea of power and influence. CEOs, investors, and reporters filled the space, their conversations a low, powerful buzz. As Alexander led me through the crowd, a wave of whispers followed us. I could feel the eyes on my back, a mix of curiosity and judgment. Colleagues and rivals alike were trying to decipher the story between the CEO and his intern. My heart felt like a trapped bird, beating wildly against my ribs. But Alexander remained a calm anchor in the swirling tide. He never left my side, his presence a silent promise of support. Then, the moment that changed everything. A rival CEO, a man known for his aggressive tactics, cornered Alexander. He was on. Subtle. In a voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, he began to publicly question our company's recent decisions, his words dripping with insinuation about poor leadership. The air grew thick with tension. The conversations around us died down as everyone turned to watch the unfolding drama. Alexander remained calm, his expression unreadable, but I could see the subtle clenching of his jaw. He was preparing to engage, to defend, but before he could utter a single word, something inside me snapped. I stepped forward, placing myself slightly in front of him. "You can't intimidate us," I said. My voice was steady, louder, and more confident than I ever thought it could be. Every head in that part of the ballroom swiveled in my direction. The rival CEO's smug smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of disbelief. Who was this girl, this intern, daring to challenge him? I held his gaze, refusing to back down. "We make decisions together," I continued, my confidence surging with every word, "and we succeed together. That includes Alexander." The silence that followed was deafening, lasting only a second before it was broken by a wave of impressed murmurs. I glanced at Alexander. He was staring at me, completely astonished. In that moment, I, an intern, had stood up to one of the most powerful executives in the industry, and I had done it with a grace I didn't know I possessed. I hadn't just defended him. I had defended our team, our work, our shared vision. And in doing so, I had earned the respect of everyone in that room. But the only approval that truly mattered was the look in Alexander's eyes. It was a look of profound admiration, something deeper than anything I had seen from him before. Later that evening, after the speeches and the networking, Alexander led me away from the noise. We found ourselves on a quiet rooftop, a hidden sanctuary overlooking the city. Below us, the city lights stretched out like a carpet of a million tiny stars, twinkling in the cool night air. The chill on my skin was no match for the warmth that was blooming between us, a silent energy that seemed to have a life of its own. Alexander turned to me, his eyes soft but incredibly intense, capturing mine in the dim light. "I've never met anyone like you," he said, his voice quiet, almost a whisper, yet it carried the weight of a profound revelation. "You've completely changed me." My heart did a little flutter, a nervous, hopeful dance in my chest. "And you've changed me too," I confessed, my own voice just as soft. We stood there in a comfortable silence, letting the city hum its nightly song around us. For a few precious moments, there was no ambition, no power, no fear of judgment. It was just us, just Lily and Alexander, suspended in time. It was the first time I felt deep in my bones that this connection between us wasn't just a fleeting spark. It was something real, something tangible, something worth protecting at all costs. As we finally turned to go back inside, the night felt transformed. I knew I wasn't just the intern anymore, and I think Alexander knew he couldn't imagine his life His world, without me in it. Was this it? Was this rooftop moment the real beginning of our story? A future where love and ambition didn't have to be enemies, but could actually coexist. Could we face the world, with all its challenges and rivals, and stay this strong, together? Only time would tell. After the gala, Alexander and Lily's bond deepened, becoming an unspoken promise between them. The office, of course, was still buzzing with gossip, and rivals were still lurking in the shadows, waiting for a chance to strike. But this time, something was different. Alexander and Lily refused to let the outside noise break them. For Alexander, a profound shift had occurred. He once saw love as a vulnerability, a crack in his armor. Now, he understood it was his greatest strength, a wellspring of courage and a beacon of hope he never knew he needed. One crisp morning, the city was just waking up, but Alexander was already in his element. He called Lily into his office, the glass walls reflecting the early sun. "We need to finalize a major deal today," he said. His voice was steady, calm, but Lily could hear the undercurrent of excitement, the thrill of the chase that made him the powerhouse he was. She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that always seemed to cut through his corporate facade. She was ready. They spent the morning huddled over documents, a fortress of two against the world. They debated strategies, their minds in perfect sync. Lily, once a timid intern, now challenged his ideas with a sharp intellect he had come to admire deeply. He saw her not as a subordinate, but as an equal, a partner. They were a team, and the synergy between them was electric. As they worked, the usual whispers started to ripple through the office. Eyes followed them, hushed conversations stopped and started as they passed. But this time, Alexander didn't flinch. He didn't even acknowledge them. He walked confidently beside Lily, his posture radiating a new kind of pride. He was proud of her growth, her brilliance. He wanted everyone to see that she wasn't just an intern. She was extraordinary. His quiet defiance was a statement louder than any announcement. He was no longer hiding, no longer ashamed. Later that day, after the deal was successfully signed and the celebratory handshakes were done, the office slowly emptied out. A rare moment of quiet descended. Alexander found Lily organizing her desk, the soft lamplight casting a glow on her face. He approached her, his voice dropping to a soft, intimate tone. "I know the world will judge us," he began, his gaze unwavering. "And some people may not understand, but I don't care anymore. I want you in my life, Lily, not just as an intern, but as someone who matters to me, someone I can't imagine my life without." Lily's eyes, which had been so focused on her work, welled up with tears. They weren't tears of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and joy. Alexander Shoy whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I've wanted to hear that for so long. I'll feel the same." That was it. The dam had broken. From that moment on, they stopped hiding. Their love, once a secret kept under lock and key, began to bloom in the open. It wasn't a grand, dramatic display, but a series of small, beautiful gestures that spoke volumes. It was the way their hands would find each other as they walked through the office corridors. The subtle, knowing smiles they exchanged across a crowded boardroom. The quiet conversations that lingered long after everyone else had gone home, their silhouettes framed by the city lights outside his office window. Each glance, each touch, each shared moment deepened their connection, weaving their lives together thread by thread. But their story wasn't a fairy tale without a dragon. Just as they found their footing, a final, desperate attack came from a rival company, a ghost from Alexander's past. They tried to sabotage Drake Industries, using a smear campaign built on fabricated rumors and forged documents, targeting both the company's reputation and Alexander's personal integrity. The attack was vicious and personal. But this time, Alexander wasn't fighting alone. He and Lily tackled the crisis together. She meticulously combed through the fake documents, her sharp eyes finding inconsistencies that everyone else had missed. He used his strategic mind to anticipate the rival's next move, cutting them off at every turn. Their teamwork was flawless. Their trust was absolute. Their combined intelligence was a force to be reckoned with. They dismantled the rival's scheme piece by piece, exposing their lies and turning their own weapons against them. The victory was swift and decisive. And in the aftermath, as they stood together in the quiet victory, Alexander had a stunning realization. Love didn't distract him. It didn't make him weak. It focused him. It made him stronger, smarter, and more resilient than ever before. That evening, to celebrate, Alexander took Lily somewhere special. Not to a fancy restaurant, but to the rooftop of his skyscraper. The city sprawled beneath him, a tapestry of shimmering lights and endless possibilities. A gentle breeze swept through, carrying the distant sounds of the metropolis. He took her hands, his touch warm and firm. He looked into her eyes, seeing his own reflection in their depths. "You've changed my world," "Lily," he said, his voice filled with a raw honesty she had never heard from him before. "I never believed I'd find love again, but you proved me wrong. I don't want to imagine a life without you." A beautiful smile lit up Lily's face, her heart feeling so full it might burst. "And you've changed my life too, Alexander. I'm ready to face anything with you." He leaned closer, resting his forehead against hers. The city noise, the corporate battles, the gossip, it all faded into an insignificant hum. In that moment, on that rooftop, it was just them. Two hearts that had navigated a maze of obstacles to find each other. From that night forward, their new reality began. They faced the world as a united front. The office gossip eventually withered away, replaced by a grudging respect and even admiration. The rivals' attempts to tear them down were futile against their combined strength, and their love, now free and unburdened, grew stronger with every passing day. Alexander Drake, the man who was once a fortress of ice, had finally found warmth, trust, and a profound happiness he never thought possible. And he found it in the most unlikely of places, with the most unexpected person, his former intern, Lily Bennett. Their story became a quiet legend within the company walls, proof that love could truly blossom anywhere, defying expectations and breaking down barriers. It was a reminder that sometimes, the person you least expect is the one who changes your life forever. In the heart of the bustling city, love had won. Two people, who were once worlds apart, were now inseparable. Ready to write their future, together, stronger, braver, and happier than ever before. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more.